Hi, so you guys probably have heard of the Monty Hall Problem, which is basically this suggestion that if you were on a game show and the game show hosts gives you three options to choose which door, and two of them are a goat and one of them is a car, then you should decide to basically switch doors when he says, well, are you sure? Maybe we can switch doors. So I'm going to show you how that relies on a couple assumptions and how in reality this isn't how it would actually really play out. Because what you'll see, the Monty Hall problem relies on two assumptions. So, assumption number one is the game show host will give you the option to switch regardless of whether you selected a correct or incorrect choice on your first choice. So that means that, according to the Monty Hall problem, he's a nice game show host. Doesn't matter if I pick one or two, he's going to ask me, no matter what, do you want to switch between these other two? Or if I pick two, he's going to say, well, are you sure? Let's get rid of three, and then we'll switch between, we'll let you choose between one or two now. You can decide whether you want to switch. Now, in that case, yes, the Monty Hall problem is correct. You would be more likely to switch. However, that is the assumption. The assumption is he will do that no matter what. In reality, if you were on a game show, let's say you picked number two, then he might ask you, hey, maybe you might want to switch. Okay, well, obviously if you picked number two and it happened to be the car, then switching in that case would, no matter what, give you a go regardless of which one he decides to remove. However, what if he wasn't so nice, and if you were to pick one or three in this situation, say I picked one first and he decided, well, I'm only going to ask him if he wants to switch if he picks the car. But in this case, since he picked number one, well, I'm just going to tell him, oh, yeah, you got the goat. Okay, so let's say that that's not the Monty Hall problem, is what you might argue, because he didn't ask you to switch. Well, if he does do that, then you never know if it is the Monty Hall problem before you start playing. So that means you wouldn't know until you picked the car, until you pick the thing that he doesn't want you to have. Then he decides, in which case, if that's how the game show host is going to play it, 100% of the time, when you pick the right answer and then you find out that you're in the Monty Hall problem, you will always, 100% of the time, get the goat. Because he will only ask you the question if you did select the car to begin with. So that means switching will 100% of the time fail. If assumption number one is not held, then switching results in 100% of the time you fail. So you have to assume that. And there's also another assumption. Assumption number two is the game show host will only remove an incorrect choice while giving you the option to switch. So let's say assumption number one might hold. Let's say you do pick number one and he wants to show, oh yeah, no, it doesn't matter what was behind it. I can prove later on I'm a good game show host because I always ask the guys on my game show if they want to switch. Okay, well, let's say you did pick number one. He says, okay, well, let me ask if you want to switch. He removes number two. You don't know what's behind it, obviously, but number two contains the car. So let's say you select number one. He removes number two, and he says, oh, do you want to switch? Well, now, guess what? It doesn't matter whether you switch or not. 100% of the time you will lose. You see? So you actually need assumption number one and assumption number two, which isn't really obvious. Like, it's not obvious that you actually have assumption number one and assumption number two in a game show, because you'll see people go play these games and then somebody from the crowd will yell at them and they'll be either yelling, switch, or don't switch. But none of those cases actually show, like, it's not obvious that assumption number one and assumption number two actually hold. So you don't know that it actually is smart to switch in that situation. So while the Monty Hall problem, it makes sense and it's true as a mathematical statement, it's not explained well in the sense of how it's applied to a situation. So I actually came to this conclusion that I would just say the Monty Hall problem is basically just a feminist meme. Now, that might be oversimplifying it a little bit. It is true that some people don't grasp the intuition behind the actual problem, which is fine. It's good to learn the problem, but it's also important to learn the assumptions and how to apply your math to reality correctly. If you can't do that, then you're not really doing math well. You don't know how to separate it properly. So that's another one of my videos. Keep posted. See you guys later.